iRacing, you wanted the best, you got them four abreast. Often imitated, never duplicated. The greatest show on dirt, the World of Outlaws.
It's a question that's been asked more than it's been answered. How do you win the Daytona 500? This race is more than just man and machine. At Daytona, there's a secret to unlock. Now, some folks call this secret the draft, and others call it the air. But as for me, I call it the wind. And carried with that wind are the spirits of the legends and the gods of racing themselves. So, how do you win the Daytona 500? Ride the wind. It's a question that
Hello everyone and welcome to V8 Online's coverage of Monday night V8 Supercar Strength of Field. We're here for yet another round and it is going to be an extremely exciting round at that. We're here at the Donington National Circuit, the much shorter variant with the extremely tough chicane to end the lap. So the lap times are extremely fast and are already coming in thick and fast in qualifying. And a very cool track here today as well, so we can expect some really good racing here today. But alongside me for this one, as always, is Mr. Zachary Hanlon.
Thank you very much, Bo. Yeah, we've got a really good race lined up tonight, and I've just noticed as well that the track temperature is very cool, so we should be seeing some pretty quick times out of these guys tonight. Track temp of only 19 degrees. I was going to see those guys holding on to plenty of grip with their tyres, so we've seen in the last few races a lot of guys spinning up those wheels, trying to get desperate, going quicker and making overtakes, so hopefully those guys will have a little more traction and we'll see some nice racing tonight.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It's of course a very tough track to pass, but with these conditions, it is going to make passing just that little bit easier, so hopefully we can get some really nice fights happening around this circuit, which features so much elevation, especially in the first part of the lap, and also some hard braking zones around as well. But right now, we're just keeping our eye on qualifying, and Dane Warren doing whatever he can to keep this championship alive. 3/10 currently ahead of championship leader Marlon McMullen, who is in P number 2, and Jordan Ross continuing a good run of form at the moment. He's in P number 3 once again, so really good form by him. And Cooper Webster and Jamie McKnight round out the top 5 currently. And because of the nature of this circuit, already we've got drivers well and truly finishing their second flying laps. So I'm just keeping an eye on Brett Cananzi at the moment, currently in position number 10, exiting the final chicane. And we'll see what kind of lap time Cananzi can do, currently in P10. And that's a big lap time improvement. In fact, he goes all the way up to second. A fantastic lap from Cananzi there. So he goes from 10th position all the way to P2. So a fantastic lap there.
Yeah, and Marlon McMullen's not going to have any answers for that because he bailed out of his second attempt and made a bit of pit stop practice by the look of it. So I'm just going to have a look at Corey Preston as well, who's gone to 4th. And that'll round out his qualifying. So we've got a couple of guys within half a second here in the top 5, which is pretty good. But yeah, Jordan Ross has been putting in some pretty impressive performances recently as well. But Brett Cananzi there putting in an absolute flyer, only 2/10 behind Dane Warren and just sneaking in a 10th before Marlon J. McMullen as well. We might just have a quick look at the official championship standings with drop rounds included, because that paints a kind of more realistic picture of where we're sitting with the championship standings at the moment. So up there in P1, we have Dane Warren, who has managed to claw back that deficit that he had to Marlon McMullen and has now overtaken him, but only by 29 points. So Dane's sitting there on 784, Marlon on 755. So a really nice tight battle between those guys. Jordan Ross and Brady Myers as well, a couple of guys who have been putting in some really nice performances in the last few rounds to bring themselves into a relatively better championship contention. I don't believe that Jordan or Brady may have done as many races as Dane or Marlon, so we'll see in the next couple of weeks if those guys start to spike up there as well. Cooper Webster also in that top 5, who's been putting in some really consistent performances throughout this series. Corey Preston bringing in 6th position. He's had some good luck and some really poor luck, like at Spa and at Montreal, where we obviously saw him take a pretty heavy hit into the pit wall there. Brian Borg as well, who's had some interesting results the last couple of weeks, is still up there in pretty good contention within 40 points of the 3rd place position there. Then we've got Thomas Hinz, Emily Jones and Brett Loxton, who have all been making relatively consistent appearances throughout the rest of the season, and they'll round out the top 10 for the championship at the moment. Now, we do have most of our championship contenders in here, but I'm not seeing Emily Jones or don't think... In fact, most of the people are here. I don't think Brady Myers is here either. So 1 or 2 contenders in that top 10 who aren't here tonight, but most of the others are here, so they'll be trying to push forward their championship, position as well as they can tonight.
Yeah, a good opportunity here at Donington to make up some championship points, and for Dane Warren, perfect situation right now with a car between him and Marlon McMullen, He'll be starting off in position number 3. Of course, qualifying has finished. A couple of guys just out at the moment getting their final few laps, adjusting to the weather conditions, which, like we said, are very, very cool here today. So tyre warm-up will be quite a struggle for these guys if they do indeed take tyres in their pit stop in this race. Of course, might only be a 28-lap race, but you still will see some pit stops in this race, which will be awesome to see, and will provide one extra bit of strategy for these guys to try and get ahead of the next car.
Yeah, these guys have got a significantly reduced fuel load from the last round at Spa, where they didn't actually have to make a pit stop at all. Just seeing Brian Borg doing a couple of 12s there, and he was doing some practice starts. And I noticed they've got new sponsorship on that car as well, so that's nice to see. But we might take you to the qualifying standings as we've just concluded the session. So we've got Dane Warren qualifying in position 1 on a 1 minute 4.7. He's followed up closely by Brett Cananzi on a 1:04.9. And we've got other championship contender very close to Dane Warren in position number 3, Mullen J. McMullen. Corey Preston rounding out that second row. We've got Jordan Ross and Cooper Webster in positions 5 and 6. Jamie McKnight and Matt Morris taking out row number 4. And then we've got Brian Borg and another one of our consistent people in this series, Greg Sharp, who are going to take out your top 10. And those guys are all separated by less than a second.
Yep, and from position 11 to 12, we have Brett Loxton, Ross Rizzo, Stuart Vaughan, Brian Bateman, Daniel Trim, Luke Page, Craig Jones, Daniel Wood, Thomas Hinz, and Wayne Burke, who did not actually get a qualifying lap in. So those guys will be starting from the back of the grid, but already a lot of these guys filing onto the grid already. So these guys are very eager to get this race underway, which is awesome to see. Corey Preston just putting a bit of a warning in the chat that this car's very unstable. So that's one thing we will have to keep an eye on. But already down to just 1 or 2 more cars left to grid up. And we'll see how that goes, but already the revs are rising. The nerves will be rising as well for our leaders out front. Can they get the perfect launch? No wheel spin at all. And it looks like another good launch from Dane Warren. He's going to lead our way into turn number 1. But McMullen already challenging Brett Cananzi into turn number 1. So we'll see how that goes for them. But it's all single file at the start, but it's definitely not single file back in the pack as we have Corey Preston already around. He said the car was unstable, and that has been proven in the very first corner. One of the Penrite sponsored cars in the background in the grass as well, but we all file away downhill now into the very fast section of S's. Can the drivers make it through unscathed through here? Lots of guys side by side, loose on the brakes as well for one of the cars in the background is there, but they've all survived for now. And now it's a big run uphill as Corey Preston with the slowdown. That allows Wayne Burke to take advantage, and also Danny Trim off into the grass as well. So mid-pack well and truly beating the panels off one of another already as they're going side by side once again. So fantastic stuff in the mid-pack, but fortunately our leaders have got away unscathed, and Brett Cananzi has lost that position to McMullen. So McMullen already onto the heels of Warren, and we've seen so many times this season Warren pull out a massive lead after the first lap, and Zach, that just hasn't happened here today.
No, it hasn't. Well, it's a situation on this track where it's so much shorter, and obviously these guys are pretty close within lap times of each other, so it is significantly more difficult to pull away. Corey Preston's had an awful first lap to that race, by the way. I don't believe he's sitting any higher than third last at this stage. I also noticed that he made a bit of contact with Jamie McKnight while he was having that little half spin, and he's had another 2 or 3 excursions on that first lap alone. So Corey Preston has a lot of work to do. And Matt Morris as well, who actually started in the pits after qualifying 8th position, is going to be coming back through the field as well, but he's good 9 seconds off the back of the field at the moment. But nice to see our leaders getting a pretty good clean start. There is a bit of a gap between Jordan Ross and Jamie McKnight. McKnight carrying a little bit of damage to the front left-hand quarter of that car, so we'll see if that affects him for the rest of the race. But Dane Warren, nice and smooth out front with a little bit of a gap over McMullen, followed by Cananzi and Jordan Ross. And I suspect that we might see these guys in a little bit of a train for most of this race, given the nature of the track. But there's a little pack forming back here with Brian Borg, Jamie McKnight, Cooper Webster. They're all over the track. They're going 3 wide into turn 1. We're going to see Jamie McKnight bumps a little bit there with Brian Borg, but they're going to make it through as Jamie McKnight gets very taily.
Oh, no.
Coming up next to Dan, Borg has been turned around, and that's a disaster for Brian Borg.
And they're so lucky to get away with this right now if it stays as it is, because this has bunched the pack up so much, and Wayne Burke and Stuart Vaughan side by side through one of the fastest corners. They're going to continue their fight uphill. Who's going to back out? Who's going to play chicken through the very fast section of corners here? And Wayne Burke gets so close to door-to-door contact with Stuart Vaughan. He's now got the inside and should be able to get the position there. And we'll see if Vaughan does, in fact, just pull in line there. And looks like he is, so we're going to see how that goes. But all of a sudden, a huge move up the inside by the number 5 car of Ross Rizzo in his brand new Trick Sim Sports car. Of course, did leave Pro Force Racing, so there is a driver swap for him. But right now, he's trying to prove his worth to the new team to try and get past Stuart Vaughan. But that's not an opportunity that's waiting just yet. And he's got to be careful of Craig Jones in the CMR Racing team as well, just behind. So a lot of new teams we don't often see in this series all of a sudden beginning to make moves. But look at Wayne Burke. He is doing whatever he can to get up the inside of Brain Bateman, sends it up the inside. I'll take that, thank you very much, to the number 17 car, and they're going to get a push to shove on the exit, and that's opened the door for Stuart Vaughan. They're going to go side by side for the second lap in a row, and it's a 2x2 as we head down the hill. Wayne Burke all over the grass, and it looks like we're just about going to get it back to single file, but these boys are not going to let anything slip.
Jeez, Wayne really checked up there. I suspect that is due to the fact that he cut that corner, as you said, on the grass into turn 2 there. That's really unfortunate for him. He's had to check up and slow down and lose all those positions that he was just doing so well. He was up from position 20 at the start of this race up to position 9, so that's a devastating mistake to all the hard work that he's put in so far. But a really aggressive start from all these guys up the front here. Another person who's looking pretty feisty at the moment is Brett Loxton. He's worked himself up onto the back of Jamie McKnight, and he's going to have a little look down to the inside at turn 1, and he's locked up the rears a tiny bit. He's going to give some nice racing room. Jamie McKnight knows he's there, and they're going to go 2x2 down through this section of corners here. Be interesting to see if Jamie decides to tuck in, and he will. And he's going to run very wide and pull it back. And he'll just concede that position to Brett Loxton, who's in our top 10 for the championship contention here. So Brett now moving up the order, but there is a big gap between Brett Loxton and Jordan Ross at the moment. That gap out to about 3 or 4 seconds now. And ahead of Cooper Webster, there's a 5-second gap to the leading battle pack of Dane Warren, Marlon McMullen, Brett Cananzi, and Jordan Ross. These guys are all single file, but Dane Warren is extending his advantage slightly. He didn't extend it by too much that lap, just 0.2 of a second, but having that little 1.5 second lead is just a nice, it's a nice way to start off the race, not having any pressure from behind. As we just have a look now at Greg Sharp, who's just had a bit of a moment there. We'll get a cut price racing replay for you on that one. And it looks like he was fighting it out with Brian Borg. Brian's gonna maybe just having a look, and actually Greg, pardon me, has done that all on his own, just locking the rears there, coming into the final chicane. So that's unfortunate for him. He'll drop to the back of the pack and have to try and regain all that time. But yeah, it's been a very aggressive start to this race, Bo.
Yeah, it certainly has, and it's not over yet. I'm still keeping an eye on this battle pack further down in the field, including Ross Rizzo and Wayne Burke, and Burke is just looking at every opportunity he can to get a position, but it's Rizzo that might be able to get a position here, because not the best exit for McKnight, but he does get a pretty good braking zone done into this chicane, which does mean that he holds onto that position, but it has compromised the exit considerably for both him and Ross Rizzo. So Wayne Burke has got the best run of any of these guys, and they're thinking about 3 wide into turn number 1. Burke just pulls behind McKnight, which is a smart move because he gets past Rizzo. But for just position number 8 at the moment, these guys are going hammer and tongs about it. Yeah, that was probably a bit of a missed opportunity by Ross there. I think he quite easily could have put a move on both of them there. But Jamie McKnight actually did a very decent job defending both of those positions. But that final chicane is one of the biggest opportunities for passing, because if you can position somebody as Wayne is, oh no, and he's just Jamie McKnight there trying to squeeze himself up on the inside. That's not generally a
it's not generally a widely used overtaking opportunity. It's not impossible, but it is very dependent on both drivers knowing exactly what's going on, and maybe Jamie McKnight just caught a little unawares there, as he was probably looking forward on the track, looking to take the apex of the next corner, and who was that?
Moment in the background for the 18
That was
car.
Luke Page. Yeah, absolutely. Luke's just lost that coming out of the final corner there. I think he was just too heavy on the gas and just overcorrected way too much there and into the fence. That car's got some pretty... it's actually rather unscathed, just a little bit of damage on the rear quarter of that car. So a lot of mistakes so far from quite a few of these guys. Not necessarily unforced errors, but errors in close quarters, which can cause you to lose a lot of time. And Jamie McKnight is going to be... Well, Jamie actually hasn't had fantastic pace in that car so far tonight. I don't know if that had anything to do with the initial contact that he had with Corey Preston. He's going to let Thomas Hinz right by. So I would suspect that Jamie is having a few issues with that car, whether it's due to setup and just general pace or due to contact. It'll be hard to say. Corey Preston making his way through the field as well after those early incidents. He's back up into P11 and right on the tail of Craig Jones. He's going to dick it up the inside of Craig there and get some nice traction coming out of that corner. One of these guys is going to have to yield, and it looks like it's going to be Corey. He'll try and set Craig up for later in the lap as he's getting very sideways. And Corey did say that he was feeling quite uneasy with that car, and he's getting very close to the back of Craig there, using some different lines to try and poke his way past or force Craig into a mistake, but he's lost a bit of time there, and he's got Braden Bateman right on his tail as well, who's not been putting in a bad performance so far. So Corey will have to look forward, and just having a look through the rest of the pack, this battle for the lead, this lead pack up here is quite sparse now, with Dane Warren extending his advantage to 3 seconds, and Brett Cananzi tailing Marlon McMullen for second by about a second there, and Jordan Ross has just fallen off those guys slightly too. So Corey's actually, no, he's still just behind Craig there, so he'll have to make another round of this circuit behind that CMR car, which is looking fantastic as always. We have made a couple of comments on that car. Now, something I did see on one of the cars earlier, I think it was Brian Borg, looks like they've got some new sponsorship on that car from Opticoat, so that's a nice new livery there. But Brian, unfortunately, back in P17 after starting 9th, so he's got a lot of work to do after a couple of early incidents.
One thing I do just want to quickly bring up, and not that the man needs any more credit for the job that he's doing, but Dane Warren at the moment, I literally, as I begin to mention it, he does break that streak, but until lap number 10, every single lap he has done has been quicker than Marlon McMullen's fastest lap, and the consistency has been outrageous. Lap 7 to lap 9, there was 0.003 of a difference in his lap times. That was it across 3 laps around this circuit. His consistency right now and his pace is absolutely flawless, and it's no surprise that he is pulling out that margin at the moment to McMullen. Warren doing a fantastic job on a dying computer, it must be said. His Mac, his loyal Mac, not quite being as good as it once was. So for Dane Warren, maybe having to throw in the white flag for his computer eventually. But right now, no need to throw in the white flag, as that gap continues to get larger and larger between him and McMullen. But right now, Craig Jones, like you were mentioning, really having to defend quite hard from Corey Preston and Braden Bateman, who are one of the closest battles on track at the moment, as Craig Jones, commentators Jinx, runs wide. Corey Preston said his car was oversteering, and he almost had a perfect opportunity to get up the inside of Craig Jones, but just lit the rear tyres up and could do nothing about it. So for Corey Preston, going to have to wait one more turn potentially if he can get a good run, but a bit of damage on that JSMR car, so may not be able to get a move done with straight line speed. So Corey Preston might have to start thinking tactically, as Brett Loxton is going to be the first driver into the pit lane.
Woohoo! And Corey gets very, very taily coming out of that last corner there, and he's actually going to have to concede a position to Braden Bateman by the look of it, unless he can hold it round the outside, which he is going to try and do. Braden does have a much more preferred line into the next corner, but unfortunately wasn't able to carry the speed through turn 1 to nab that position back off Corey. But Corey's car, as you've been saying, Bo, has not been looking particularly fantastic. But you're right, we are getting into that pit stop phase. We are expecting cars to be pitting probably around lap 14, around the halfway mark. So you can probably do +1 or +2 or -2 laps on that. We're currently on lap 12, so we'll see if some guys start playing strategy. I think people who can really benefit out of this are guys down in the mid-pack, like Brett Loxton, Ross Rizzo, Craig Jones might be able to do something, Corey Preston as well, coming in early, getting some fresh tyres and just getting some clean laps in. And I would say, looking at the delta between everyone at the moment, that guys will be coming out in clean air if they do make a pit stop right now. So I think we've got someone in the lane who's just come in now. It's Thomas Hins. So Thomas has elected to come out from, I think, around P16 there. He's going to drop off the jacks and leave the pits. A pretty short pit stop for him. 12 seconds stationary. So I think that's a relatively average stop there, with probably some tyres included on that. So be interesting to see if his pace increases and we see some more guys coming through the lane on this next time. And as I just say that, Marlon J. McMullen and Brett Cananzi both coming in. Brett locking up the rear brakes very heavily there and nearly looping it as he comes into that pit entrance. Both these guys looking for their marks. Brett having a little more of a difficult time because Marlon's pit stall was before his, which means he can't see his pit man as easily. So we'll see which one of these guys comes out of the pits first. Presumably Marlon is off the jacks, but Brett is not far behind at all. So these guys coming out just behind Daniel Wood, and they've got a significant gap behind them too. So long as Daniel's not ridiculously slow, which it doesn't look like he is, he was only 8/10 off qualifying compared to Marlon. So hopefully he will not hold these guys up, and we can see if they can regain a little bit of that gap that Dane Warren's been able to pull out as well.
Yep, and Dane is now in the pit lane, and with a pit entry slightly less spectacular than Brett Cananzi, who was often posting drifting videos himself, and he's putting it to use here in this race. But Dane Warren now giving up the race lead to Jordan Ross, who does continue on his way. So Jordan Ross continuing his run of form and will be leading the field at the moment. And with clean air, he's got a really good chance to just find a few more seconds to the cars he was battling with the likes of Cananzi and McMullen. Because, of course, these drivers that are beginning to pit now, they are coming out in a little bit of traffic. So it's going to be very interesting. But Dane Warren with an extremely long stop there. And look at this, McMullen's going to go past. And Cananzi just squeezes past. Mamma mia, that was a bit close for those two. But Dane Warren, that was... I did have a bit of a suspicion that was a very fast pit entry. And I've got a feeling that is what eventually bit him, because out of nowhere, he's gone from a 7.1 second race lead to what lead? He's in position number 3.
Well, I just wonder if maybe he decided to do something that the other guys didn't. Maybe the other guys, I mean, I would assume that everyone's taking tyres. But Dane's stop was significantly, it was 8 seconds longer than most of the other people who have made stops. It's about 7-8 seconds longer than everyone else. So that doesn't quite amount to a speeding violation, and it doesn't quite, unless he underfueled the car, but then he wouldn't have made it this far. So it's a little difficult to say what happened there for Dane. But he's been showing some really impressive pace, and he's not far behind the cars of Brett Cananzi and Marlon McMullen. So he'll have some work to do. But that has definitely spiced this race up a little bit. And Jordan Ross is coming out just behind of him as well. And Wayne Burke, who started position 20, he's going to be coming out just behind, it looks like, Stuart Vaughan. So, but within decent striking range of Cooper Webster and Brett Loxton, who haven't been showing extremely good pace. So obviously Wayne was caught out by going too wide earlier and having to cut the track, which lost him a dramatic amount of time and position. So he's got a little bit of a gap up to Stewart ahead of him. So he'll have some time to get in the groove and make that gap back and put a move on Stewart, hopefully.
Just in the meantime there, Zach, sorry to interrupt there, but we've actually got word of what has happened to Dane, and it's a big, big issue for him for the remainder of this race. During his pit stop, the fuel would not untick, so he's actually taken not just a little bit of fuel, but a full tank. So not only has he lost so much time in the pit stop now, but now he's got a heavier car than anyone else in the field.
Yeah, well, I mean, luckily it's not going to be the full 112 odd liters that these cars can take in a normal racing situation. These guys are limited to a 45% tank for this race, which would leave him at about 50 liters, which is not ideal, but it's also not the end of the world. His first lap back out was very fast, actually. It was a 1:04.819, which is the fastest lap of the race. So he obviously still has quite a lot of pace in that car. Brett Cananzi is only 0.2 quicker, but they both were significantly faster than Marlon McMullen on that time round, who put in a 1:05.3, which is half a second slower than Dane Warren. And as these guys come over the line again, you can see that Dane has closed up that gap to Brett Cananzi a little bit, and he crosses the line again in the fours, and the other guys are not even close to the fours, really. They're doing 5.2s and 5.3s, so he's got a half-second advantage over these guys still. So it looks like it's going to come down to Dane having to put a move onto these guys on track. But yeah, that is a really disappointing issue for Dane.
Cananzi! That was a huge moment. He so nearly lost it across the gravel there. Sorry to cut across you there, Zach, but Brett Cananzi is so lucky to still be in this race, and he's lost a bunch of time to McMullen in that, and also he's now got Dane Warren all over the back of him. And Warren, if this isn't an optimal acceleration point for Brett Cananzi, could lose the position to Dane Warren. So for Brett Cananzi, very lucky to stay in this race, but now he is under threat big time.
Yeah, he's going to have to stop thinking about his drifting videos and start thinking about how he's going to defend from Dane. And he got a particularly poor exit coming out of that chicane, which is one of the key points to making an overtake here. And Dane dives down the inside, a very late move. Brett's going to keep it running wide. They're going to go 2x2 through turn 2, but Brett is going to have to concede and just fall in behind Dane Warren. So Dane will be very happy that that was a nice and easy move. He hasn't lost too much time, but Dane's still on a charge, still in the fours, and Marlon McMullen last time round a 1:05.4. So I think that we'll see Dane, what's the gap at the moment? 1.3 seconds. So he should be back up on Marlon within the next 2 to 3 laps. So this battle for the lead is going to hot up pretty quickly, and there's also a bit of a battle going for 5th, 6th and 7th. We've got Cooper Webster, Brett Loxton, Stuart Vaughan all within pretty close proximity, and Wayne C. Burke, who has been putting in, honestly, not as good times as I would have expected him to be doing at the moment. He's actually falling off that pack, and I would have expected him to be closing up on them pretty rapidly. So the battle for 5th, 6th and 7th still definitely not over, but this pack up at the front, Marlon McMullen, Dane Warren and Brett Cananzi, this is definitely not over. And if Brett can try and hold on to the back of Dane, he may be able to come up and sneak that position off Marlon as well, because Marlon did get out-qualified from Brett in the qualification earlier, but just made a mistake on that first lap where he had to concede to Marlon. So we've got a good 8 laps. God, there's only 8 laps to go. This race has been flying by.
Yep, race has gone by very, very quickly, but another thing that's going by quickly is the gap from first to second. Dane did not have the best run into turn number 1, locked the brake up and lost a bit of time. And lighting the rears up like that, Dane, I know you're trying to impress Brett behind you, but no, that's not the way to catch McMullen. And in fact, he's not going to close by as much on this lap, only 1/10 of a second. So he does have to find a bit more time than that to be truly attacking McMullen. But these two, we can't forget, fighting for the championship against one another. They did it last season as well. These two were the two protagonists for the championship. And Dane Warren also just trying to do whatever he can to get redemption, of course. He's got the uphill battle of having the heavier car. And we've also just quickly had Cooper Webster in the pit lane. In fact, he's actually blown up a bit. So that's a bit of a disappointment there for the Performance in Sports car.
I think we might just get a cut price racing replay of that if that's possible. And it looks like coming down into the final chicane, I might just... Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think... Yeah, he's had too many downshifts there, or he might have just gotten on the downshifts a little too quickly, and that engine has gone kaput. That thing has virtually no go left in it whatsoever. So that's unfortunate for Cooper, who was in a good position and is in the top 5 for our championship contention. So he'll be kicking himself over that one. That's all down to the driver, unfortunately. And that battle for 5th, 6th and 7th, which he was involved in, will probably be taken back a little bit. And I'm just having a look. Wayne Burke has not been picking up those lap times either. So he was able to charge early and get some positions there. But we'll just have a look now at Stuart Vaughan and Brett Loxton, who were part of that battle with Cooper Webster before. And Stuart is all over the track trying to keep up with Brett here, who's been putting in a pretty good performance this race. He's in a top 5 position as Stewart is taking a much tighter line on the apex through that corner there and getting very, very wide and slidey as they come through the penultimate corner before the final chicane. And this is the corner, I think, where you can really lose or gain most of your time. If you come in too deep here, you can get a really poor run, and that's where we've seen most of our opportunities for overtaking today. But both of those guys on this occasion getting through there without too much of an issue, as the battle for the lead is now heating up. We're within 0.6 of a second between Marlon J. McMullen and Dane Warren. Brett Cananzi, unfortunately, has dropped off a little bit, but Dane has been picking up those lap times. He was 0.4 of a second quicker that lap than he was on the previous time. So the pressure's really going to be coming on for Marlon now, and with only 5 laps to go, all he really has to do is hopefully just keep it parked on the apexes, make sure he gets a good run out of the final corner, and he could be looking at himself with the #1 position in this championship. But he has gotten absolutely caught up by Dane Warren on this lap, and the gap is now 2.5 tenths as Dane sliding under brakes. He's obviously got a lot more speed in this car, even with all that extra fuel that we were talking about earlier, where he had an issue with a pit stop. So Dane, even after having a 6 to 7 second disadvantage during those during that pit sequence there, is still able to catch right up to the back of Marlon. But Marlon keeping it nice and smooth. Dane trying to push very hard, looking for different lines, trying to force Marlon into a mistake, because that's going to be one of the few things that can cause an opportunity for Dane to slide on through here. And as well, if these guys start battling a little more than they'll want to, Brett Cananzi could be back up on the top of these guys. It's only a 1.5 seconds back to Brett from Dane, and Dane is looking to get a very nice exit out of there, cutting the first corner, first part of that chicane very heavily in order to try and have maximum or the shallowest line through that final section of the chicane. But it's not quite enough. He is maintaining that gap at around 0.3, and he just needs to keep it nice and smooth behind Marlon here so that he can try and have another opportunity to make that overtake.
Yeah, and he's looking very racy at the moment. He's all over the back of the PSS car, and McMullen's going to have to pull something special out here. He's got 3.5 laps to defend one of the most hard-charging drivers in this field right now. and Warren is a man on a mission. And you can just see if he's not lighting the tires up in the dirt like that, he's just got so much more confidence in the car, under brakes, turn in, acceleration, just everywhere. That ASM car has so much more performance in it, or Warren himself has so much more confidence in the car. And you can see there, McMullen has no option but to defend for his life, defend for the race lead. And I think we're going to see a crisscross here.
Yep,
that is a beautiful
absolutely.
run from Dane Warren. McMullen lights up the rear tyres with so much more overspeed for Dane Warren. And if he can cut across the nose of McMullen here, which he has full intent to do, he can get the position, but McMullen's not going to make it easy around the outside. And it's just about job done for Dane Warren. Fuel or no fuel, he's going to take the race lead. He's going to take the championship lead. Dane Warren is a man on a mission, and Marlon McMullen, today was not your day to stop him.
Yeah, Marlon does not have any answers for Dane right now, and you can see that car gripping up, not gripping up, and then gripping up again. He's already half a second behind at least by now. So I got to say, though, that was a really nice move by Dane. He got beautiful traction coming out of the penultimate corner and forced Marlon to the inside of the track, and that's exactly what you want to do for that final corner. You saw the difference in straight line speed down the main straight due to the fact that Dane was able to get Marlon in the position that he wanted and then just take the brakes really easily and just focus on getting a really nice exit. And that was a really, really fantastic move from Dane Warren there. And, you know, that's just another example of why we've seen this guy shoot up so quickly through the championship standings. He is obviously our reigning champion, so it's not surprising, but this guy has definitely been putting in some fantastic performances in the last couple of rounds, and here at Donington, that is absolutely no exception.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do nothing but just applaud what Dane Warren is doing right now in this car, and he's doing a fantastic job. But also, we do have Brett Loxton and Stuart Vaughan very close together, and Ross Rizzo also trying to make a bit of a charge at the moment on Wayne Burke. So still got battles happening all throughout the field, including Breen Bateman, who has a 4-car train behind him, including Jones, Preston, and Hins. So they're all doing a fantastic job too to try and scrap some final positions out of this race, which has only just got 1.5 more laps of life left in it.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be a bit of a stalemate race, not much overtaking, but it's turned out to be an absolutely fantastic race. Warren comes across the line to start his final lap around this very, very short track, weighing in at just 3.1 kilometers. That's all he has to do to hold on to this race lead. Fuel's not going to be a concern for him at all. He's going to be very well and truly fueled to the end, and maybe a bit more. But still some battles not quite done yet, as Thomas Hins looks to the inside of Corey Preston. They're going to go side by side into the chicane, and Preston's so much later on the brakes, but he's so late on the brakes that who needs a corner? We're going to go straight across the gravel. We're going to rival Jim's mowing service across the lawn, and that's going to give a bit of a run now to Thomas Hins, who's going to be side by side for the second time in 2 corners, but he's on the outside, so he's not got an easy way of it. Corey not very confident in the rear brakes of that car, skating all over the place, but does hold on to that position for now. But for Dane Warren, now with just a few corners to go, in fact just 2 corners to go, and what a race this has been. 7.2 second lead before the stops, a huge drama for the dying Mac in the pit stops, which forced him down to P3 as he bumps all over the curbs for the 28th and final time. Dane Warren, that is the moment where you stand up and give a round of applause. A fantastic drive there from him. McMullen comes home in second, and a very impressive drive from Brett Cananzi as well. Jordan Ross continues his run of form in position number 5, and it's going to be a heck of a fight for the 5th spot, as Brett Loxton is going to hold on by the skin of his teeth ahead of Stuart Vaughan. A fantastic drive there. Rizzo will only have to settle for P8 for his new drive in Trick Sim Sports behind Wayne Burke, and then we also have Breen Bateman and the Craig Jones battle. But look at Thomas Hins in the background doing whatever he can to get past Corey Preston, but in the end, just not quite enough.
Yeah, that was a very impressive race from a lot of people there. And we're just hearing as well...
Oh, Daniel Trim!
Daniel Trim's out of fuel, and he's going to have to lose those positions to Jamie McKnight and Daniel Wood. So that's a bit unfortunate to him, but he does manage to get it across the line. Jamie McKnight having a pretty ordinary race there down in P15, but yeah, really nice race from a few guys there. Wayne Burke, big mover of the race, plus 13 positions from P20 up to P7, so a great job from him. So we'll just have a look at our results for you now. Dane Warren, with a commanding performance despite having fuel issues in the pit stop, takes out this week's iRacing V8 Supercar official race at Donington Park Racing Circuit. He was followed up by Marlon J. McMullen, who put up a nice fight but wasn't able to take the cake on this occasion. Brett Cananzi taking out the final spot on the podium. A nice drive from someone who we don't see as much in this Monday night official race. So good to see another person up there in the top three. Followed by Jordan Ross, another solid performance from his recent run. Brett Loxton, one of our championship contenders, putting in a solid result for the top 5 position there. Then we've got Stuart Vaughan and Wayne Burke, our big mover of the race, followed by Ross Rizzo in P8. And Braden Bateman and Craig Jones are going to round out the top 10 for us.
Yep, and then we had that awesome battle across the finish line with Corey Preston and Thomas Hinds rounding out 11th and 12th. Brian Borg and Matt Morrison and Jay McKnight round out the top 15. McKnight not having his best performance we've seen, but no doubt he'll bounce back in strong form next week. Daniel Wood rounds out position number 16, and he finished 16 seconds ahead of Daniel Trim, who trimmed out the fuel just a little bit too much. And Luke Page, who'll be trying to turn a page next week and get above 18th place. And of course, then Cooper Webster, who blew up in pretty spectacular fashion in the pit lane. And Greg Sharp had a bit of a night to forget there with these 28 laps of Donington. But, well, we said at the beginning of the race, Zach, that it might not have turned out to be the most exciting race, not many overtaking spots, but how did that turn out?
Well, it was pretty fantastic. I mean, I guess maybe one of the things that we may have oversighted was the fact that on these short tracks, a small mistake can make such a big difference. I mean, most of these guys were lapping within a tenth or a couple of tenths of each other. So having a minor mistake like that can really affect the way that you know, even just getting a poor run out of that last corner, even though the pit straight is very short, you get a really bad run, as we saw from Corey Preston and Marlon McMullen, as Corey Preston was digging up some lawn for bonus lawns, I think, on that last lap. He was lucky to keep that position. But it was actually, the race was much better than I expected it to be. And I think that's a credit to a lot of these guys. Did see a couple of contacts, which is a little unfortunate. Jamie McKnight finishing down in P15 obviously suffered quite heavily because of some contact that he had with Corey Preston on the first lap, as he started from 7th position, and he usually finishes quite well in these Monday night races. So, and Brian Borg, another guy who didn't finish particularly well. Corey definitely would have liked to have finished higher, starting in 4th and ending up 11th. But you know, it was a fantastic race overall. I really enjoyed it.
Yep, and we have even more fantastic racing happening all throughout the week. And if we can just get a hashtag rest in peace Jay in the YouTube chat, because kicking off things on Tuesday, we have the Down Under Graphics Sprint Car Summer Series. And that proved some really good racing last week. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those guys go once again. And then on Wednesday, we return with the Oceanic Sprint Championship, which comes from Mount Panorama. If you didn't get enough of the racing in GT3s at the Bathurst 12-hour over the weekend, then we have even faster racing, lower fuel loads, and even more cars on the grid. So that'll be fantastic to see. On Thursday, we have the CPR Car and Sim Parts Rallycross, which has had some interesting finishes over the last few weeks. Mitch McLeod. And then on Sunday, the Oceanic Endurance Championship, and also the big one, the Major Series, Daytona 500, which should be a fantastic race, something a bit different on the V8 Online channel, but will no doubt prove some fantastic racing. And then on Monday, the week after, we head to Phillip Island, 35 laps. It's going to be a big one, and the championship battle between Dane Warren and Marlon McMullen will continue to grow once again. But for myself and Zach, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.